Okay, everybody, this is going to be part 2 and a deeper discernment of the darkness. But before I get started, I want to remind you about what I've taught about the difference between prophets and false prophets, how to identify them. Now, I want you to realize that I've shown you things that were always there. Anybody could have found them. But it was given to me to give to you. None of these other prophets, these prophets had discernment to give it to you, because this is what they are. They're the equivalent of a psychic or a palm reader. That's what their equivalent is. I could sit here all day into next week and tell you about a shaking is coming and a whirlwind and a tsunami and an earthquake and a volcano. Guess what, people? Newsflash. That happens somewhere on the globe every single day. Not once a week, not once a month. Every single day. And this is what these psychics and these false prophets do. It's called a hit and a miss. That's what these psychics and palm readers are taught. You go all over the place with what you're saying. That way you hit on something. That way these psychics, so-called prophets, will hit something at some point. Because again, these events occur every single day on some part of the planet. But this goes back to what it says in scriptures about how men who believe, and it goes for women too, men who believe themselves to be wise will be made fools at the time of the end by the ones that are truly appointed by God. They'll be proven to be these false prophets, these psychics and palm readers. And their whole goal is to get those dollars out of your pocket into theirs. Because this is what they serve, the almighty dollar, the serpent and the rod. They glorify themselves as they dance around in front of the camera like monkeys. They're the dancing monkeys on the streets that are looking for your tips. That's their equivalent. That's what I associate them to, the little dancing monkeys that dance around in front of the camera and tell you to send them your money. Buy my book, buy my CD. You can get my great discernment. And I've proven just how the word is correct. How these these men who believe themselves wise will be made fools. That SCOTUS, this darkness, was here. None of these so-called prophets had discernment to see what was right in front of their faces. So let's move forward in this teaching. And there's going to be a couple that I've already had to be put on notice. Derek and Sharon Gilbert, I've had to put them on notice. Perry Stone, I've had to put him on notice. You know, they take what I give freely and try to sell it to you in a book as if they have some kind of great discernment, when all they've done is plagiarize my stuff and to sell you a book, to self-edify, self-glorify. So, realize the parallels of the times, and just like it says in scriptures, what will be, what has been will be again. There's no new thing under the sun. The darkness was known as Erebus in the time of Egypt. And it was also associated to the great Ennead, the 9 gods of Ennead, and their job and duty was to judge who was going to rule. And notice what happened with SCOTUS this time in the presidential election. You know how SCOTUS became a big factor. So this is what they were known as in the time of Egypt. And this was the time when Moses was in Egypt. This was that darkness that was the decline and the fall of Egypt, the darkness, the 9th plague. Realize that also. in Exodus chapter 10, verses 21 through 23, that the darkness was the 9th plague of Egypt. So, and Egypt fell, which was in its time the greatest empire. But then also it was known as SCOTUS. And notice that is the acronym name for the Supreme Court of the United States. And realize that just recently, in recent times, it's been called SCOTUS. They use this acronym. And it has the 9 justices and everything about the 9. It's their duty to decide. And this goes to the places in scriptures where it talks about these principalities in high places, where you wrestle not against flesh, but the principalities in high places. These are some of those principalities. Very important to understand that in scripture. And notice how accurate scripture is. But I want you to remember, those of you who have followed me, I actually was teaching this over a year ago. Go back to my abyss videos, location of the abyss, and what I was teaching about theta and 9 as it related to the judges' decay and decline and judgment. This is what prophecy is. Again, I could sit here all day in the next week and tell you about an earthquake, a tsunami, a plague, or something. And it happens all over the globe every single day. I would just only be like a fortune teller or a psychic. So realize this was the parallel, or this SCOTUS is the parallel to the 9th plague of Exodus as it relates. Very important. Now, when I taught you about being still, this is what's important. So, this branch of government, this is called the judicial branch. This is an entity, a principality, a body. Very important. This is a body and a branch that is not bearing the fruits of God. And you can find in John chapter 15, verse 2, what God and what Christ the Lord does to these branches. Notice he is the Word. God is the Word, and the Word is with him. See the prophecy in Scripture being fulfilled. This is the judicial branch. And just as it says in John 15, verse 2, he will prune and cut away those branches that do not bear his fruits. Very important. So you see, people, all these prophets, again, I could sit here and tell you all day into next week about a shaking, a whirlwind, a tsunami, earthquake, a volcano, and look, I would be accurate just like them, but I give you specifics. I give you things that were there to be taught this entire time, but it was only to be taught by God's appointed and anointed. This darkness, this SCOTUS, this entity, this body, this branch that is not bearing good fruits. And see that the point of this is to edify and glorify the Word that is God. I don't dance in front of the camera like a monkey and show you how I'm so amazing and send me some money for what I'm teaching you. Paul taught about how this was disgusting in nature. Christ whipped these ones out of his church when they turned the Father's house of prayer into a place of merchants and a den of thieves. You won't see me get in front of the camera and edify and glorify myself. because all the glory belongs to God, the Word, in His omnipotence. And see that He reveals all through the Word. And just as Scripture states, what has been will be again. There is no new thing under the sun in everything that I've taught. Very important. It's the Word, people. These branches that do not bear His fruits. So, important to know who you're learning from. Have discernment of prophets versus prophets. These are why these two words exist. Because these false prophets have no discernment. They're just dancing psychic monkeys in front of your camera. So, stay in the Word, people. The most important thing to remember is be in the Word yourselves. Very important. God bless.